All right. Hello. Welcome to this $1 million action plan. Specifically, today we're talking about from busy to productive because let's face it, going from spinning your wheels to making millions is going to require focus. It's not going to accidentally happen. Okay. So, whether you're here to regain control of your schedule, stop your wheels from spinning, or finally focus on that right task or the right tasks that will drive your business forward, you're in the right place because most business owners often get stuck in the busy trap. We're always working, always checking things off that to-do list. Trust me, I've got plenty of those. But we're always feeling like the real progress we want, just there never seems to be time for it. And because of that, we'll end up exhausted. We end up stretching ourselves way too thin. And we ask ourselves, like, what did I accomplish today? And then you're searching and you can't really seem to figure out what that was. But you're like, I know I was really busy. That we wear this like busy badge of honor. So today we're going to work on changing that. We're going to talk about strategies to move out of busy mode and into focused, intentional productivity, right? Like that sounds so much more freeing than just I'm busy and using that as a thing to say. Now, I will totally admit, I think some of us, like we associate busy with successful. Many of us, we saw successful people when we were kids and they were always busy. So that mindset can come from many different places. But watching that and starting to observe that in yourself is really, truly key to this continued personal and professional development. Today, I'm also going to talk about the 12-week year, not my not my program, but how I've taken that and shifted it into how I now work within my focused flow method. And so I'll give you a little bit of glance of like the 12-week year, which is a great book. It's in the resources that I'm going to show you today too. I've got a free resource for you. So stay till the end and you'll get that link. But how we can accomplish more in 90 days than most people would in a year is the real true thought behind the 12-week year. And then we're going to cover some of like my key techniques that I have figured out, tested, and found was really best for me. So time blocking, but getting more specific, how to protect your focus, the practical hacks to beat procrastination, and how to simplify decision making, which can lead to burnout. So by the end of this, you're going to create a sample 12-week plan. You're going to get some tools. You're going to work on how to structure. And again, I have at the end, I've got a whole resource of $1 million habits and resources for you. So stay tuned. I'm going to make sure that you get that. Who's ready? You ready? All right, let's move. Next slide. Okay, 80%. I had to pull up the statistics and I was quite amazed. 80% of business owners feel consistently busy. That part didn't surprise me. All right. But it's only a fraction of the time that is spent on actual items that move the needle forward. So, Harvard research, they do some really great research, okay? They found that 20% of the average workday is spent on the high impact activities. 20%. Okay. So I'm asking you, like, what would you say is your busy stuff and what would you say is the high impact stuff? And if you have not looked at those, it is so important that you take the time to start doing some time tracking and task tracking in what you're doing each day to see like what is moving the needle forward. What is your 20%? Because 80% is not is not the same. And we might have to get real with ourselves so that we can break this cycle of busy because it's not about doing more. It's about doing the right things, the key activities that's going to drive the results, the revenue, the freedom. And in order to have freedom in your business, you can't be trapped in the busyness. Those two things are not the same. Okay. So I'm hoping today that you're going to walk away with some clarity. I know you will. Some action steps to move into productivity that's going to lead to more profit. So 40% of business owners report spending more time on low impact tasks. And I can tell you, having worked with several people as a hypnotherapist on productivity, that most of us will spend 4 hours doing something to avoid the thing that would have taken 20 to 30 minutes. Have you ever done that? Or you're just like, oh, but I don't feel like doing that. So I'm going to do all these other things instead of doing the thing that I need to do. And then we end up having to do the thing we do anyways. Again, 80-20. So just putting that into perspective. So a survey in Inc. magazine found that nearly half of small business owners feel trapped in day-to-day busy work and leaves them little room for strategy and growth-driven tasks. That sucks, right? Like that's not where we want to be in our business. Studies show that multitasking, which what does a lot of businesses do, can reduce your productivity up to 40%. Yet 80% of business owners still say they're multitasking because this is a feeling of scarcity and survival. And it's a lot of this like anxiety and everything that's getting us to do all these things that isn't helping us. So we have to get back into this like more relaxed state. Getting into that strategy first mindset will allow us to focus on the 20% rather than focusing on the 80%. Okay, so the American Psychological Association shows that constant switching, oh my gosh, yes, task switching actually eats away your productivity, focus, and quality of results too. Who has noticed this? Like if I'm going to get in creativity mindset, I need to do my creative stuff. And then if I'm going to get in logical mindset, I can't switch to creativity really quick and vice versa. So being more strategic is going to very much help you in staying productive. So the power of focused time is really leaning on this concept of it's not about how much time you spend on working on it. It's about what you spend your time on that really is truly going to create real success. Every hour you spend on high impact tasks is an investment in your business growth. The rest is just letting time slip away or melt away. And it just made me think of like the Dali melting clock, right? So imagine, and I really truly encourage you to journal on this. Imagine what your business would look like if 80% of your time went to the right activities, right? So if it's 20, like, oh my gosh, right? Or what if you just spent the 20% and you actually got that 80% of time back? And you were able to get more intentional and more focused. Uh, if you to go to the like richer ends of town, you will notice there are better park systems. There are people actually in the parks utilizing the parks. There are people that are prioritizing health and downtime because they know that they need that in order to do the 20%. There is a different shift there, allowing yourself to have the energy to do the 20%. Because if you are in constant frantic fight flight mode, it is very challenging to make yourself do the 20% tasks because they require a different way of thinking, a different way of doing, a different way of being. So to get yourself into the mindset where you can focus on doing those, this will alleviate time. It will allow you to reclaim time. It will allow you to be in this state of feeling the freedom that you truly crave, because otherwise you wouldn't have started your business, right? Like most business owners say, not just their time, but wanting to help people. And you're not going to get to enjoy helping people if you are just constantly next, and never even getting into a state of gratitude. So just give me a yeah, understand. So a little bit about me, just real quick. I thought I'd share a little bit about me so you know how in the world do you know all these things. I am working on my fifth degree. I'm working on my PhD in metaphysics or theopsychology. My previous degree was an MBA, so a master's in business. And I have about 56 certifications. Now, I say this not to brag. I say this because I also have 3 kids and I'm running 3 businesses, and I'm not doing that. Like, I still have time to take a nap occasionally, okay? I do that because I focus on the 20%. I do not bother with the 80% tasks. That's generally how I approach it. And I do have more strategic structure into my days that does allow me to also volunteer places on top of everything else. Because again, this focus, I became quite obsessed with looking at how can I get more done in less time, because I've just always been one of those people. I'm a Capricorn. I've always been one of those people that I feel life is short and I can't accomplish all the things I want to accomplish. So I'm always on this like train to busy town, and I've lived by to-do lists, and I've been through a lot of what I'm teaching. So please know that I've tested all this stuff and I've felt how real it is. All right. So just want to mention that so that you got a sense of it. Some of the things that we're going to cover today, we're going to talk about the busy trap, the mindset shift, the 12-week year, time blocking, procrastination, creating your plan, and then making sure that you don't get trapped in decision fatigue, as well as those resources too. So let's talk about something that almost every busy business owner falls into, and that's where you're constantly feeling like you're working and there's just this never ending task to do list. You really can't pinpoint anything significant you've achieved most weeks, most days, most months. I work with business owners and we do a monthly review and monthly plan, and most business owners struggle every single time to celebrate their accomplishments because they're just so busy going to the next thing, putting out fires, responding to emails, handling small tasks, keeping themselves busy. And the truth is that busy doesn't mean productive. Again, Harvard research says that 20% of an average workday is spent directly on impact tasks, while 80% is that busy work. So, how does this happen? Why does this happen? Why do we fall into this busy trap, and feeling like we're staying productive? So that's where I ask you to go down this rabbit hole of what does success mean to you? And I know this seems so silly sometimes, but not to just think it, but to actually write it so that you can read it back to yourself, to list out and do not just a time audit, but a task audit so that you can really truly see what is moving the needle forward. These are really important steps in this journey to better productivity and reclaiming freedom as well. So busy can sometimes be comfortable as well. And I'm like, you're like, how is it? That doesn't, but if it's your norm, if it's a default for you, because that's what you've seen, that's what you've heard, that's what you've gotten in the habit of doing, then we have to starve the old habits and feed the new habits. And it's going to take more bold actions. It's going to make you feel like you're taking a risk by cutting out some of this. But really, the truth is, if we're filling our days with more low impact activities, then we're missing out on the high impact work. And often it's the high impact work that reduces all of the low impact work, or most of it. So note where you're creating noise. And again, some of the things I work with my clients is sometimes we're creating that noise in a sense of avoidance, and it might be avoiding another task, but it might also just be avoiding feelings and emotions. And emotions are not bad, they are not wrong. They are there and they need to be heard. So I won't go down that rabbit hole today, but to know that there is research that really does support that as well. So we're making this shift to try, instead of just working harder and just staying busy and doing things for the sake of doing things, but to shift into that working smarter, not harder. Okay. Can we agree? Can we take a chance on this? Are we ready to implement this? So now that we've looked at that, we've gone into the mindset just a little bit. Again, we're getting out of the doing more and into doing what matters. And that does mean that, and you might have read this too, where a lot of successful people say it's not in what I say yes to, but it's what I'm saying no to. And being able to claim your ability to say no, because getting caught up in the yeses is a lot of that 80% as well. So rethinking your approach to work. Okay. The problem isn't that we're just busy, it's also what we're focused on. And we need to be focused on the things that aren't the small, the little fires, because you can get caught up in the fire and in the storm where you can't see in front of your hand. You can't see the big picture. You're just so in the like day to day stuff, and you're not readily moving in a direction when you're doing that. So being very aware of that. I want to give you a reframe. So here's a reframe. Instead of asking yourself, how can I get more done today? Have you ever asked yourself that? I encourage you to shift into what's one thing I can do today that will make everything else easier or even unnecessary, right? So, what's one thing I could do today that makes everything else easier or even unnecessary? This can be a game changer. Okay. So, zeroing in on those high leverage activities, being intentional, focused, and strategic with your time. Progress is better than perfection. Focus on getting things done. You can always perfect them later or have someone else perfect them, right? Like you could get someone who's really great at creating snazzy PDFs, even if you like doing it. You have to create that content and then have them make it beautiful. And you might be surprised they might even do it better than you. Okay, so one of the biggest game changers for me, I mentioned this early on, was the 12-week year. And granted, all of these have been game changers, but this one really was a totally different way of approaching how I did work. And I was really surprised and quite shocked at how much more I was getting done. I was suddenly doing 4 times more in 1 year than I was typically in 1 year. And it was because I implemented this way of thinking. And even when I was a college professor, I started teaching this to my students because it would allow them to get more things done and not procrastinate on top of that, and to get more excited about it and keep it future focused. So most people need this container to work from. If there's not a container, then it feels more whimsical. So if I was like, I'm going to write a book this year versus I'm going to write a book in 12 weeks. Do you see, like, that feels so much more different? So research shows that people are more likely to make progress on goals as deadlines approach, right? We felt that. A behavior called deadline induced focus. So we are going to reduce the deadline and we're going to create that momentum that most people would get in the final year of their goal. But we're going to reduce that by making it 12 weeks, 90 days, or 3 months. I like 12 weeks because I line it out by the week. And sometimes that gives me a little cushion in case I fall behind, because most 3 months are actually around 13 to 14 weeks. So bear with me on this. Again, breaking goals down into smaller chunks helps the brain process them more easily. Neuroscience tells us that our brains are wired to handle short-term goals more effectively than long-term. I think we've heard that, right? We feel that. So, what we're going to do is we're going to take one high impact goal today specifically, and I'm going to encourage you to take this big, hairy, audacious goal that you would normally set maybe in a 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and you're going to do it in 12 weeks. You're going to break that down into specific tasks, and I'm going to explain that just a little bit more here, but I want you to have an intro. Scheduling weekly check ins to check your progress and adjust as needed. And then also setting power hour each day to focus on the steps that you need to actually do. So, actual time to work on it and do it. So, for an example, if I was like, hey, I want to write a book, I'm just going to keep using this example. In week one, I'm not going to need to write the whole book in week one. I just need to create the outline, brain dump, and any key things that come to mind at that time. And that's my goal for week one, because that is one micro thing that needs to be done, and it needs to be done first. That's going to make all of this so much easier. So why wouldn't I do that first? Okay. So other goals you could have is like increase your client outreach and lead generation by 30%. So we're setting kind of those KPIs. So this would be nurture your leads, build relationships, expand your network. And you could start to like outline what you want that to look like and work on that each and every day. Another goal could be to launch a new digital product or service. Maybe it's a book. So just giving you those examples. All right. When I mentioned power hour or having that time blocking. So time blocking is, again, game changer. Like I cannot say another thing, another word for it, because it really truly is. When I say I'm going to do something for someone, um, because I have so much like focused time on my calendar, if I don't put it on my calendar right then and there, I probably will forget, because it's just going to go into a notebook and it's going to be on another list. And then I'm going to have to catch up with all these lists. Versus if I just put it in my calendar and say, okay, I can work on it then. If I need to move it on the calendar, I can, but it's there. So that would be part of time blocking. I also want to make sure that all of my essential things that I need to do are on my calendar, so that people aren't randomly booking times with me and I'm getting caught up in all of these random meetings rather than doing the things that are going to actually move my business forward. So I have to do that, and I have to guard that time. Now, having a dedicated hour to work solely on a high impact task can also allow you to turn that 20% into 80%. Where could you imagine if it has the power at 20%, you're amplifying that, how much more ingrained that goal is going to be, how much focus, how much intentionality, and really staying focused to your game plan. Okay. You can also batch tasks. So as I mentioned, I think I mentioned it before, in like being in creativity mode, I need to get myself into creative mode, and then I need to allow myself to be in creative mode. Versus if I'm like, I got to do this thing, now I got to do this thing, and I'm bouncing back and forth, it's going to be way more exhausting, first off. But I'm going to have more downtime in between the task switching. So allowing yourself to say like, hey, on Fridays, I don't schedule any meetings. I'm going to do some meditation, some journaling, and then I'm going to dive into X, Y, and Z of my creative work that needs to be done. Same thing on Mondays. I need to do more of the hustle mode activities, and I'm not going to have a lot of creative things on that day. And I would set those boundaries so that I can communicate those boundaries to other people. Okay, makes sense? Good to go. Okay, procrastination. I'm going to give you some tools here that really help. So, one, know that procrastination doesn't mean that you're lazy. Okay, it's not that you're lazy. It's We're all been there. Sometimes it's actually fear based. It can be overwhelm. It can be perfectionism, or just an avoidance of some reason. But it normally is fear based. So things that we can make sure, what needs to go on the calendar versus what needs to be done now. I use a 2-minute rule. If it's going to take me 2 minutes or less, I do it now. Okay. Now, being careful that you don't get, again, caught up in putting out fires. But if it's like a 5-minute thing, that's not a 2-minute thing. So 2-minute things get done now. And if someone tells me something else I need to do, then I'm going to schedule it, because I don't have time to do that right now. Maybe I do, but if it's not on the calendar, most likely I don't. All right. So breaking it down into manageable tasks. So we have our things that we would do immediately. And honestly, these small tasks actually give us a quick dopamine boost too. So it'll help with productivity, or at least keeping a momentum. But don't get caught up in like doing a whole bunch of little things unless you're intentionally choosing that. This is helpful too because it will clear some of the clutter. If you've got this like overwhelming task list and it's a ton of like little things, it still feels overwhelming versus if you can clear that off. Okay. The other thing is having the right next step. So, what I mean by that is instead of being overwhelmed by the big picture, if you feel that overwhelm, ask yourself, what's one small action I can take right now to make that easier? Again, if I wanted to create an outline or just do a brain dump, do some brainstorming. Again, neuroscience tells us the brain responds better to short, actionable steps rather than abstract, long goals so that we can eliminate the fear and overwhelm that can come with big projects. The other one that I really want to mention is the Pomodoro technique. So this is 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off. It's kind of like Tabata training in that sense. So things that I might do is if I'm focused and I'm on my computer and I am um, doing something very mental based, then that 5 minutes I will get up and do something physical based to help balance it out. Uh, I find that works really, really well, especially for people who have anxiety, right? They're in their mind. They need to go like run and get the hormones out of their body. Same thing here. Our brain's been really active and is getting tired, and then we need to get our body tired or get it active too. So that's where I might like organize my office real quick and I'll set timers. Or I might go do the dishes real quick, or I might like wipe the kitchen counters off, or so I'll do something physical for 5 minutes. And I find that actually makes me feel really productive as well. But if you are caught up in a task and you're like, I can't stop, I would not go more than 45 minutes. Okay. Really, science is showing that that is where you'll be your most productive. Um, you might feel like you're in flow, but just to get up and move the body, maybe you go to switch to a standing desk or something like that. So these short bursts can increase your productivity and focus by up to 25%. So it's another one where it's like science is really showing that it will make a big difference. And maybe even that 5 minutes, you're just writing out other things that came up on your mind. So there's many different ways you can approach it. You will have to figure out what's working best for you and make these minor tweaks and minor pivots. Um, it is a practice pivot, but not dropping the practice altogether. All right. So now we're going to do the plan. Make sure you've got your notebook or you can type this out too. That's totally fine. You are going to pick that one big thing. Maybe you already did. And give you just a moment here to pick that one thing, write it down. Do not just think it. It's not the same. You got to get it out of your brain and onto paper. Physically write it down so that you can see it as well. And then I invite you to break that into three big buckets. For example, if we're doing a membership drive, I've got the pre-launch, I've got the actual launch, and then I've got the post-launch. So I'd break that into three core sections. Let's say in the pre-launch, I'm going to write down kind of breaking that into 3 to 4 sub buckets. So it might be like email communications. It might be like the marketing that I have to do. So I would break those things down into those sub buckets. So what you have now is 1 month, 2 month, 3 month. And then within the 1 month, I have week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. And now within each one of those, I'm going to break those out into, let's say, 5 additional very tiny subtasks that I now have one thing to do each day. That makes it really simple, right? Like I could get my whole membership thing done in 3 months. Fantastic, right? So having all of that, map that out, and then schedule a regular power hour daily to work on these. If you need to say like, hey, okay, I'm already up. I'm not having to get up earlier, but every day at 7 o'clock, I'm going to schedule an hour, power hour with myself from 7 to 8 to work on this and get those things done. If I need additional time, I'll schedule additional time, but at least I'm going to commit to that hour every day. Now, you might say, hey, Izzy, my schedule's a little different. So I might need like lunchtime on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then I might need like 4 o'clock on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That's fine. You figure it out, but have a consistent time that is on your calendar to work on that so that you're not skipping it. And one more key thing that I want to hit home on, and this is decision fatigue. So, avoiding decision fatigue, again, research shows that it drains mental energy, it leaves us exhausted, it leaves us prone to procrastination. When decision fatigue sets in, we end up avoiding work or, worst of all, making poor choices. So this is where like fatigue comes back in. Again, if you're focusing on the 20% and you allowed yourself to catch up on rest, to actually get the naps in and allow and get the exercise in and get the good food in so that we can do more of that 20%. The same thing is saying with decision fatigue. So Harvard research shows daily decision making can reducing daily decision making can boost productivity up to 30%. Okay. So for every for every decision you simplify or automate is energy that you're saving for what matters most. All right. That is it for today. I do have a free resource for you. It's the 12 million dollar habits and resources for you. You can go to izzynalley.com/free and snag that. There's probably some other resources on that page too. I'm going to make sure that you can see this. So you can go to that resource page, get this. There's some books you can read, some podcasts you can listen to. I think there's even like a productivity journal in there as well. So things that you can start applying. I would love to hear from you as we wrap this up today, though. And what's one of your key takeaways? And then what's one of the key things that you're going to start doing, that you're going to start implementing rather? Because we're not worried about doing more. This is talking about implementing the mindsets, the strategies, the shifts, rather than just one more thing on the list to do. This is a different way of working. All right. I hope to connect with you soon. If you aren't following me on social media, you can put Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And then you feel free to send me a message. If you just go to izzynalley.com, there should be a link where you can book a call with me to talk about your business if you'd like to talk about that. But I hope this is helpful and I hope to see you again soon. All right. Bye.